So I would like to introduce our speaker tonight. Sally Gee is the project manager at the California State Coastal Conservancy. And she's going to speak to us tonight about the Ormond Beach Restoration and Public Access Project. This is a collaboration between the State Coastal Conservancy, the City of Oxnard, and the Nature Conservancy.
So thank you all for having me today. I'm very excited to be here. This was my intro slide, but Rachel gave me a great introduction, so I'll just move forward and talk to you about the Ormond Beach Restoration and Public Access Project. Just before that, I'm going to give a little bit more information about the Coastal Conservancy. We're a state agency, and our vision is for a beautiful, restored, and accessible coast for current and future generations of Californians. And so we act with local partners and others to protect and restore these places and increase public access to California's coasts, ocean, and coastal watersheds. About 75% of California's population lives within our jurisdiction in the green areas on the map. And Ormond Beach kind of sits in our Southern California region, whose team I'm a part of. So I'm part of our South Coast regional team. I'm based in Los Angeles, while our main headquarters is in Oakland. And so we, as a Coastal Conservancy, the way we partner with others is that we're a primary funder of wetlands restoration in California. And so the Coastal Conservancy has been involved in most nature-based adaptation projects in Southern California for nearly 50 years. We were founded in 1976, so a very long time. And with that, we also have been involved in Ormond Beach for quite a while. And so as Rachel introduced, the Coastal Conservancy is working with the Nature Conservancy and the City of Oxnard to advance this project. The Coastal Conservancy targeted Ormond Beach for habitat restoration and protections in the early 1980s. And then in the 1990s, we worked with the City of Oxnard to extinguish some paper lots that were on the beach, so homes right on the beach. And then in 2002, early 2000s, the Coastal Conservancy purchased about 260 acres from Southern California Edison. So it's that orange color on the map. And then in 2005, we provided a grant to the Nature Conservancy, and we purchased another about 270 acres from, I think, the Metropolitan Water District. And so this whole boundary that we see in yellow is what we're calling the Ormond Beach area boundary for this specific project. And it's about 650 acres, and it's about 2 miles of coastline running from the city of Port Hueneme, just on the top corner, going down to the bottom corner, which is the border with Naval Base Ventura County, Point Mugu. And so I am a recent addition to the Coastal Conservancy, about 2 years. I'm really picking up the work and continuing the work that many partners and organizations have worked on for the last multiple decades to make this project a reality. And Ventura Audubon Society has been a great partner in all of this work at Ormond Beach. So I want to thank the Ventura Audubon Society for your shorebird recovery program and going out there and fixing all the fence enclosures and monitoring snowy plover since the early 2000s. So why Ormond Beach? Like, what makes it so special? Why are we fighting so hard to protect it? So it's actually a very unique place in Southern California. It's the Coastal Conservancy thinks, and a lot of people think, hopefully, that it's one of the most important wetlands restoration opportunities in Southern California. And it's one of the last places that has an intact beach dune to wetland transition system or complex of habitats. There's no major highways or railroads that run through this area in Oxnard or this part of the coast. And so there's a lot of room for habitat to migrate inland as sea levels rise. And, this area has been so degraded from agricultural uses, industrial uses, and energy extraction, that there's a lot to do here and a lot to restore. And it's also a very valuable recreational beach area. It's about 2 miles of coastline that, you know, while a lot of places in Southern California are losing their beaches to sea level rise, this is a place that we can protect beach access and recreation for a long time because there's just so much space for the system to move inland as time goes on. And so despite all the serious impacts of these human uses on the habitat in Ormond Beach, there's still a variety of habitat that exists on site. There's open water lagoon, there's dunes, salt marsh, and uplands. And these areas protect a lot of special status species. So just to name a few, we have the western snowy plovers and the California least terns, of course, that nest in our dunes. We have tidewater goby, which is a really tiny fish that lives in Ormond Lagoon. And then we also have Belding savanna sparrows that kind of breed and forage in our salt marsh areas. And so Ormond Beach is really truly an amazing opportunity to restore all these different types of habitats in this one space. And so obviously restoration and conservation of Ormond Beach has been in the works for quite a while. And in 2017, the State Coastal Conservancy partnered with with the Nature Conservancy and the city of Oxnard to put all our vision into a united plan. So we came up with the Ormond Beach Restoration and Public Access Plan, and our acronym is OBRAP, which I think is a pretty fun acronym to say. So we call it the OBRAP plan. It was completed in 2021, and it analyzed various restoration alternatives. So we range from light modification to moderate movement to very heavy grading to restore habitats. And we landed on a preferred alternative that was vetted through or developed through community engagement and through us working with scientists and regulatory agencies. And so that plan is available on the city's website on the link below. And this is the preferred alternative that came out of that plan. There's a lot of different colors on the screen, and basically it's just showing that there's a mosaic of habitats and wetland habitats that we're looking to restore in this area. And as part of the OBRAP plan, we developed two main goals of the project is to restore a mosaic of habitats that are adaptable to sea level rise, or restoring physical and biological processes to make these habitats more functional by recontouring some of the wetlands, improving hydrological connections between areas. And then the complementary goal is to make sure that we want to increase public access to this area that doesn't have a lot of formal access right now, but to make sure that the public access is in line with our restoration goals and that it works well with the habitat protection that we're trying to do as part of this project. And so within the last 2 years since I've joined the team, we're moving forward from the preferred alternative. We're considering what we can do to implement as a first phase of the OBRAP plan. And so we have been working on what we're calling the OBRAP Phase 1 project. And we've identified several areas that are outlined in black as areas that are the most readily available for restoration. These areas are not currently used for agriculture. They're not part of the Halico Superfund cleanup planning project. And they're vacant areas that we feel that we can make something happen. And our goal is really to start construction of some of this in next year, 2026. So it's very exciting. We do have some funding secured for construction, and that's why we're kind of pursuing this planning process right now. Although that funding, we secured it, was based off of cost estimates developed in the 2021 plan. So cost estimates since 2020 have definitely increased since then. So we're not sure how much everything will cost eventually. So we're just building out a full suite of restoration options that we can kind of pick and choose from with community input on what we think, what is the most important and what we should be implementing first. So there might be multiple phase 1 projects as part of this. So I'm just going to walk through what all the options that we've developed so far with our team. We're working with environmental science associates, forgot to mention them earlier on, and they're a consulting firm to help us really design our wetlands restoration and to kind of break up the project area. We have 3 sections of the project site that I'll be walking through. And so on the right side, you have Arnold Road coming down on the border with Naval Base Ventura County, Point Mugu. And so that's our eastern segment. So we have the Arnold Road sub area, and then we have an area just above that that used to be an old oil tank farm that's SoCal Edison was storing the oil before we purchased that. And then we move on, jump over the Ormond Beach generating station, and now we're in the central segment, right down Edison Road in that middle red arrow. And this has some great habitat already, but there used to be there's a fallow agricultural field that we are looking to restore. And then the last segment, all the way on the right, is the western segment, and that is coming down Perkins Road and around Ormond Lagoon. And that skips over the entire Halico Superfund cleanup planning site. And so those are the 3 segments that I'll be walking through for the rest of the presentation. And I'm hoping to get your input at the end of this on some of our design processes and answer some of your questions. So first off, we're going to start off with the eastern segment, the one off of Arnold Road. And so there's already some great habitat areas that are there. So our intention for areas that have existing habitat is to protect those areas and enhance them through just invasive non-native habitat removal, so taking out those plants, and then planting with native vegetation. So we're not doing any grading or much work in those areas besides helping them a little bit to recover. And then in the tank farm area, where it's kind of the deeper colors, that's where we're looking to do more of the earthwork, I guess you can say, earthwork and restoring more functional wetlands in these degraded areas. So that includes a small portion of, pointing it out here, this is the Oxnard drainage ditch number 3. And so it doesn't look great most days. Well, some days it might look great, but some days it's the water quality is not so great. And so we're looking to increase some more wetland habitats on the edges, and hopefully that will have more freshwater wetlands, whereas the rest of the site will be more salt water or salt marsh habitat. So you can see in the picture on the lower lower side, and on that side, beyond the fence is the tank farm wetlands, and that's the area we're looking to grade and restore. And so this is just a cross section of that old tank farm area. So that red line is the cross section, and you follow it from, I guess, the right-hand side down to the left. Basically, you can see that if you follow the dotted line through the slide, that is our existing level of the ground surface. And then the bold dark line is our proposed restoration elevations. And so you can see that there's 3 dips, you would say, or in the cross section, and those are 3 shallow basins that we're looking to excavate down about a foot into the ground to try to connect that wetland into closer to the groundwater and restore some salt pans, which is a really cool wetland system. And then around it, we'll have some higher elevation marshes. And then you go across the site towards the Ormond Beach generating station, we'll have some upland habitat or coastal sage scrub. And so all the fill and dirt that we're kind of excavating out from these shallow basins, we're going to put them up in the northern area where it's brown, so that we have a surrounding higher elevation area for sea level rise and habitat to kind of go up and transition up to as needed in the future. And the same idea with these different basins, they're not all the same level. They're kind of slightly moving up in elevation. And that's because with sea level rise, we expect the lower basins to fill up with water more frequently. And so that way we can have maybe one basin fill up more frequently, but then 2 other basins that can serve the function that we are hoping to achieve with the salt pans. And so I'm going to explain what are salt pans. And so salt pans are shallow, seasonally flooded basins. So basically it's a really shallow basin, and they're usually ponds with water either from the ocean or groundwater, and usually this water is really salty. And so instead of the water running off the basin or draining down into the ground, the water evaporates. And so it leaves behind a lot of the salt from the water. Therefore, it makes the soil hypersaline, so really salty soil. And so it makes it really hard for plants to survive. So it's mostly unvegetated. So you can see kind of example on the top, that sandy colored, that's from an existing salt pan on site. And these habitats are, in the 19th century, 80% of these habitats have been lost in Southern California, probably because there's nothing on them and people probably cover them up to do agriculture or build on. And so we're trying to protect as much of these salt pans as possible and restore this really unique system at Ormond Beach. This is a underrepresented habitat type in a lot of wetlands restoration projects. It's just not done a lot. They're very dynamic systems, like when they're dry, or I'll start with when they're wet. They offer open water habitat to a lot of migratory birds. As you can see, at San Alejo wetlands, there's a big salt pan. That's a picture of it on the screen. And then when they're dry, they can also serve as nesting sites for plovers. Cynthia has told me that they've seen some plovers in some of our existing salt pans. So that's something that's not in the beach dunes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, Cynthia just chimed in from the room, and she says that she's really, correct me if I'm repeating it wrong, but she's hoping that restoring these salt pans will really expand nesting sites for snowy plovers and least terns. And we're definitely hoping to do the same as part of this project as our goal. And so these salt pans really contribute to the complexity of the wetland habitat system. Right. And so that was kind of our habitat restoration aspect of the project. And I'm also going to now transition a little bit to the public access portion of this specific area. And so right now you can go out on site and you'll see our salt pan, and then you'll have Arnold Road. That's a picture of Arnold Road leading out to the ocean. Have you been out there? Maybe at the end. Yeah. All right. So we at Arnold Road, we're hoping to develop a trailhead with where there's like existing kiosks that we're hoping to add more interpretive signage. We're hoping to add a shaded seating area and also an overlook so you can go look over the wetlands. And then if you choose to go down south towards the ocean, we're planning to remove the asphalt that's currently on Ormond Road and regrade it and maybe make it a gravel trail, so more permeable surface. And as you get closer to the beach or sandy area, we're also thinking about rolling out beach mats to make it more accessible. So we definitely want to try to increase accessibility of the project area to more people. And this would be about 0.3 mile from the trailhead. Okay, if you go back to the trailhead and you decide you don't want to go to the beach yet, you can go down the canal trail. So go the other way. And you will come down a gravel trail again. We're hoping to make this section also accessible. And then you would cross over Oxnard drainage ditch, either through a boardwalk or a bridge like we've pictured here. And then you would arrive at an overlook to see the beautiful restored salt pans and wetlands. And we're hoping to make the area leading up to the overlook accessible. And then from the overlook, we're hoping to end the bridge crossing. We're going to transition to a more natural trail surface, so a rustic trail. And then as you continue down the orange path, you would arrive at the transition between the beach and the wetlands. We'll hope to have another viewing area, some bird blinds for viewing, and then we'll have a trail that's marked by symbolic fencing through the beach and dunes. And then from here, you can kind of go down to the beach and loop back around to the beach trail. And that would be about a mile loop. So it's a nice walk. Yeah. Okay. And then that's kind of it for my eastern segment. And then Cynthia asked me to put a lot of bird pictures to keep you entertained. So this is a picture of a snowy plover, right? Okay. All right. So now we're gonna move over we're gonna jump over the generating station and onto the central segment. And this deeper colored area is the agricultural field, and then the lighter color area is the kind of existing salt pan, existing habitat. There's a old rail, there's a rail line that serves the port of Wainimi that crosses through here. And we're looking to work around that. And so again, similar to what we did in the eastern segment, we're gonna protect and enhance the existing habitats here by removing non-native vegetation and planting natives. And in this specific area, we have a big population of salt marsh birdspeak, which is the light colored flower that you see on the screen. It's an annual plant and it's really tiny, and they're a special status and endangered. And we're trying to revive some populations throughout Southern California. And then in the agricultural field, this is another cross section of what we're planning to restore. And we're actually grading a lot more here than in our eastern segment. So the dotted line is our existing grade, and the solid line again is what we're planning to restore. And so we do again have salt pan habitats, a salt marsh plain going up into transition zone. And this area we're actually targeting grading between 1 to 3 feet because there's just so much fill in this area that we have to restore to get back down into the groundwater levels. And we're going to move all that fill to an upland area, the brown area down right here. And that's where we're hoping to have maybe some temporary parking. So that's our plan for restoration. We'll still have salt marsh, salt pans, and transition zones, uplands. And then I want to trans over to the public access act portions of it because the restoration is very similar to what we were doing before. And so for existing conditions, when you get out to the site, this is a picture of the nice salt marsh habitat you can see, and also an amazing beach dune area where a lot of plovers and some terns nest as well. So again, we're going to start off with a proposed parking area and trailhead in the area where we're going to put our fills, or our upland habitats. And then we're going to have some signage as part of that, and a gate for vehicular access. And then we're going to travel down a gravel trail. And then you cross over a bridge over the drainage ditch. And then you travel on to the wetlands area. And so because it's a wetlands area, we're proposing to have a boardwalk that's raised above the wetlands with the tow rail. So it should be a nice walk straight down towards the dune area. We're hoping to have some bird blinds along the way for allow for bird viewing. And this area next to this is seasonally flooded. So we'll have some nice water views as well as in the winter months. And then at the transition between the beach dunes and the wetlands, we're hoping to have an overlook. So you can overlook you can see the ocean and the wetlands, and then we'll have again another beach trail or dune trail leading from that overlook and boardwalk. And then we're also proposing to have some more hardened fencing along this site. I know that we have a lot of illegal vehicular access through this area, and so we're hoping to have some steel pipe fencing or something similar that will hopefully make it a little harder for those folks to trespass into the dunes and make donuts and ride disturbed nesting habitat. So we're proposing to have this along the whole toe of the dunes and the wetland area, and then we're having it by the parking area along Edison Road as well. And so that brings me to the conclusion of the central area. And this is another plover, right? Okay. All right. And now we're in our last segment of the wetlands, the western segment, which is on the far right-hand side over the Calico Superfund site. And so in this area, we have the Ormond Lagoon. And because it's so close to the Superfund site, we're not actually going to be doing a lot of grading in this area. We're leaving a lot of the habitat in place. And so we're mainly going to be doing habitat enhancement. So removing invasive species and planting native species as we can, as much as we can. And then one thing we're looking to improve is Perkins drain. So if you go on the site, you park your car and then you walk over a really old rickety bridge. You cross over this waterway that's always filled with trash. So we're hoping to improve the drainage a little bit by filling it a little bit, restoring more of that wetland fringe habitat on the banks, and hopefully creating some pockets of vegetation so that the tidewater gobies can go in there whenever the lagoon breaches. So right now usually it's closed, and when there's a big rain event or storm event, it's enough water in the lagoon to breach the beach, and that's when the tidewater gobies need to move from the lagoon into these smaller streams to keep from being washed out into the ocean. And so these habitats that we're hoping to restore will hopefully provide some good refugia for these gobies and improve water quality. That's the goal. And so for public access, we're also planning to develop a trailhead here and add a lot of amenities. So we have a seating wall with some signs. We're hoping to have some bike racks, trash cans, and a shade structure. And then you can take just on the other side of the Perkins Drain, hoping to change that into a gravel trail, make it more accessible. And then you head towards Port Hueneme now, and we're planning to have a bridge that goes over Shumash Creek, so you can go from city of Oxnard to the city of Port Hueneme instead of having to drive through the city. And this will hopefully connect Ormond Beach and Hueneme Park Beach. And these residents can go and check out both habitats and areas with more ease. That's the idea. We're hoping to also replace that pedestrian bridge that looks like it's gonna break any moment over Perkins Drain. So these are just example images of what those bridges can look like. And then from the bridge, we're gonna build a boardwalk along the fringe of the lagoon, edge of the lagoon. We selected a boardwalk here because the lagoon is very dynamic, and so we wanted to have something raised that wouldn't be in the water. And so it could be really nice boardwalk loop for everyone. We'll have some areas, viewing areas with some seating, and also some areas that have bird blinds for bird watching. And if you kind of take the whole loop that's on the screen, that's about half mile walk. And that brings me to the end of the Western segment. Not plovers. I wanted to switch it up on you guys. All right, and so what is our anticipated project timeline? Currently, we are still in the preliminary, we just finished preliminary designs, and we're moving towards what we're calling 60% designs. And so it's basically just formalizing what I've been describing and making sure that they're transferring them into more construction document type graphics. We're also, so with that, as we move forward with our design, we want to have a second round of community engagement. So our first round occurred in October, November of last year. So we're hoping to have another round coming up in late summer, early fall. To share with you some more updates our team has been working on. And then at the same time, we're also hoping to submit our permit applications for the project. So we'll give it a whole year, hopefully, to secure all our permits, get complete final design by next spring, summer, and then start construction maybe after the nesting season is over in 2026. It for the project. Thanks for listening to me.